Hi guys, Danny here today to talk to you about the book Stealing Fire. And I'm going to tell you up front, when I got this book, it was with a combination of trepidation, skepticism, and curiosity. That wasn't due to the title, that was due to the publisher's summary. In the publisher's summary, they state that this book shows how different sources, including the Navy SEALs, are using altered states of mind, from everything from drugs to Burning Man to meditation to everything else, to improve their performance. That's where my skepticism came in. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps, and during my time in the Marine Corps, my job was as an intelligence analyst. That meant that I didn't gather the information. I took the information that was gathered and turned it into intelligence. My first duty station was 26 Mu. We spent 2 years touring the Mediterranean. Navy SEALs were a big source of our intelligence gathering, so I worked with those guys. I got to know those guys. Same thing with Force Recon. Didn't become drinking buddies or anything like that, but I still got to know them well enough that I have a hard time, well, that didn't work out so well. I have a very hard time accepting the idea of them doing drugs to enhance their performance. They may drink a lot off duty, never on duty, and I just can't picture those guys doing drugs or anything like that. So the book starts off talking about Navy SEALs, and it's rather interesting. And I'll say up front, there's several areas of the book that I disagreed with. I do not feel like my skepticism was misplaced at all. With the Navy SEALs, they talk about how what they believe sets the Navy SEALs apart from any other military in the world is their ability, when they go into a situation, to achieve a oneness, to achieve a unity with each other. And they honestly make it sound like Navy SEALs are the only ones that are able to do that. Well, I know several Marines, several soldiers, sailors, airmen, that would strongly disagree with that. Then they go on to Google, and how Google uses Burning Man to hire its employees and to improve their performance. Maybe true, may not. I don't know a lot about Google. I've heard of Burning Man, don't know a lot about Burning Man. From there, the book just gets chaotic. It goes all over the place. How sex alters your mind, drugs alter your mind, meditation, prayer, artwork, back to drugs, back to, definitely a book that promotes doing drugs. In fact, in one chapter, he talks about a study that, according to the book, basically proved that doing ecstasy is safer than riding a horse. I have a hard time accepting that. His evidence sounds good and his numbers sound good, but there's another part of the book where he's just so flat wrong, it kind of nullifies everything else he says and makes it hard to accept what he said. He says twice in the book, that Moses used the 10 Commandments to start 3 major religions: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Now, while it is true that all 3 of those religions can trace their histories back to the same historical figure, that figure is not Moses, that figure is Abraham. Abraham came well before Moses. Abraham was the founding father of Judaism. He also birthed the founder of Islam. So they both trace their roots. That's part of the contention between those two, is they both trace their roots to Abraham. That's also, though, where they diverge and split apart. Moses came later in the Judaic history line. Nothing to do with Islam at all. Christianity split off from Judaism with Jesus Christ. Hey, maybe that's why we're called Christians. Maybe instead of Mosesians. Whatever. If that's all the research he put into his facts, then I have a very hard time, because that's just basic history 101 right there. He does talk about some things that did resonate with me. He tells a story about some Marines that were battling with PTSD and were given ecstasy, and it helped them battle their PTSD. That may be true. I actually have my own story with drugs helping me out. When I got out of Desert Storm and came back, I was engaged to my wife, Sonia. I moved in with her parents. They gave me a place to stay to help me get started and on my feet and everything. And my father-in-law, back then my future father-in-law, was a Vietnam veteran. And he came to me at one point and he told me, Danny, you are massively screwed in the head right now. You really need to go to counseling. You have to go to counseling. I kind of argued. I don't think you know what you're talking about. I didn't see combat in Desert Storm. We did have artillery fired at us, but that's the closest I came to combat. I never shot at anyone. No one shot at me. So why would I have PTSD? He convinced me. He gave me examples, and he convinced me. And I'll say this: further conversations with Sonia, I found out that I freaked everyone out back then. People could not stand to be around me. I just freaked people out with my demeanor and how I was and everything else. So, taking my father-in-law's advice, I went to the VA and walked through the front door of the counseling center. I was the first Desert Storm veteran they had seen. And the counselors, who were all combat vets from Nam, freaked out. They said I was just like them. I was exactly like they were when they got out of Nam. Which threw me. How could I possibly be like you? You're a combat veteran. I never saw combat. You know, I had artillery fired, but that's not combat. It didn't land on us. Nobody got blown up. Nobody died, you know, from the artillery. We did have deaths in our unit, but that was from other things, but not from artillery. So how do I have PTSD? And they explained to me that it's the mental preparations that I went to prior to going over there. I knew I was going to be with the forward command. You have a forward command and a rear command. The forward command stays about a mile behind the battle lines and runs the war. You try to avoid engagement with the enemy because you can't fight and run a war at the same time. But it is not at all uncommon for the forward command to end up engaging in combat, and there have been multiple examples of forward commands getting wiped out, which is why you have the rear command. When the forward command is engaged in combat, when the forward command gets wiped out, at any point in time they can no longer do their job and run the war because they're fighting or they're all dead. Rear command takes over. So what they told me was the mental preparations that I went through to prepare for the combat caused me to go into a heightened state of alertness and to shut off all of my emotions. And I had forgotten how to feel emotion, and I had forgotten how to relax. I was in this permanent heightened state of alertness that I didn't know how to get out of. That did not help me get past I'll call it PTSD. I don't know that it was actually PTSD, but I don't know anything better to call it. Anyhow, that didn't help me get over that. What did help me get over that was my brother-in-law coming to me and saying, hey, Danny, I know what'll help you out. You need to get stoned. Let's go get stoned together. For a month, 2 months, I regularly got stoned with my brother-in-law. That did show me how to relax. That did get me to come down off of that hyper alert state. And that did definitely, in my opinion, help me out of that. I'm happy to say that I recognized fairly quickly within that 1 to 2 months that, hey, I'm getting hooked on pot. And they say it's not physically addictive, but I do believe it can be mentally addictive. And I recognize I'm getting hooked on this, and I'm in danger of becoming dependent on pot to relax. And if I'm dependent on this substance to relax, then I'm no better off than I was in my hyper alert state. Quit doing it, have not done it since. But when he talked about that, I could relate to, okay, I can actually see how that can help someone with that. Doesn't mean that it's true, just means that that's the portion of it that I resonated with and was able to agree with. He goes all over the board. The book is extremely chaotic. There's multiple times in the book where they start off, okay, this chapter is about this. The goal of this chapter is to prove this or to teach you this. They completely fail. Half the time you're left going, what was the point of that? That was just rambling. In fact, you sound like you're stoned and rambling is what you sound like. You're going all over the place and you're not getting to a point. Or you just flat out failed to prove your point. An example, he's got a chapter where he gets into talking about animals on drugs. And he gives examples of animals that do drugs. And he gives several examples. I can't remember all of them. Dolphins with pufferfish and cats with catnip. And he makes a statement that the jungles of Africa have more animals on drugs than any city in America. And that may be true. I have no way of proving or disproving it. May well be true. But then he draws the conclusion that if animals do drugs and humans do drugs, then doing drugs must be an important driver of evolution, an important component of evolution. I do not believe in evolution. I'm going to say that right now. I do not believe in evolution. I definitely believe in creation. But even if I did believe in evolution, just because the animals do it and we do it does not mean that it is an important component or driver of evolution. It could be a harmful byproduct of evolution, something that, early evolution started into and then was never able to get out of. And as he tries to make his point, it completely fails. It completely falls flat. You're left going, what you're left with is feeling like you just listened to a presidential debate and the politician was asked one question, spent 5 minutes going, oh yes, let me answer that. Tap, 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 dance, 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 dance. And I'm not talking about our current president. That was one of the things I loved about him. They ask him a question, he answers it, which made all the other politicians go, what do we do now? Because he's not a politician. He doesn't understand. We're not supposed to answer questions. We're supposed to tap dance around this thing. That's what you felt like. He was just tap, tap, I'm going to prove this. Tap, 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 tap. There you go. There's your answer. Well, no answer. I'm going to be returning the book. I'm not going to keep the book. It strongly promotes using sex, psychedelic drugs, all sorts of different things to get an altered state of being. And while it claims that it shows that altered state of being promotes productivity and everything else, I never saw the evidence for it. His evidence was his claim that every successful member of Silicon Valley goes to Burning Man and gets stoned on a very regular basis. That's not evidence that's helping them any at all. So, the book's a complete failure. The narrator's fine. It's not much a narrator can do other than not sound monotone, and the narrator does not sound monotone. But I do not recommend getting the book. In a real strong way, the book could be harmful. I told you I recognized early on that I had the potential of allowing pot to become such a mainstay in my life that it could harm me long term. If I'd have listened to this book back then, there's a real chance that I would have not only stuck with pot, but would have tried even harder drugs, which I'm happy to say I never did. I would be terrified of one of my children reading this book and the impact it could have on them. I cannot recommend more that you avoid this book in any format. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later.